Hey, what is going on, guys? Danny here. Welcome back to the channel, and I hope you're all doing well. So, Computex 2026 is underway. So, your big companies like Intel, Nvidia, AMD, and a whole bunch of other semiconductor industry companies are there, and they're unveiling products, talking about changes in the industry, and all sorts of good stuff, right? Going into Computex 2026, and I even ran a poll on the channel, which some of you guys voted on and probably saw. I really didn't have much interest going into it this year for the first time in many, many years or like in a decade of doing YouTube, just because of, everything that's just been shifting in the industry towards AI and really consumers just being more of an afterthought, like the general consumers, like the gamer crowd, the stuff that actually excites me. But in any case, going into this, I thought I wouldn't be looking at much in terms of Computex, and I really haven't been. There have just been a few surprises here and there, and I did want to throw my thoughts out there about what AMD announced. Some of the stuff towards gamers, I guess, which I mean is better than nothing, right? Um, so there was a bunch of stuff that they talked about. I have this page open here, which kind of summarizes what they were talking about at Computex for CPUs and GPUs in terms of gaming. And I'll have a link to this article down below so you guys can check it out. This video isn't scripted or anything, too. Honestly, like these days, I haven't been scripting shit because yeah, YouTube's just been kind of punishing me when it comes to the algo and viewer count and all that stuff. So honestly, these days I haven't really been giving it much effort either. But it is what it is. So AMD, they announced like a whole bunch of stuff, right? They announced the 7700X 3D. They also talked about how they're extending support for AM5, something that they have done before. This is just marketing, guys. Don't pay much heed into this. When they talk about supporting a socket till like 2029, it doesn't really mean jack shit if the partners, the motherboard manufacturers aren't going to be supporting their chipsets until 2029. So this is just a big marketing play. They're talking about the RX 9070 GRE. That's just another big nothing burger because they launched a weaker GPU than the 9070 non XT at the 9070 non XT price at $549. So less VRAM, less CUDA cores, less shaders, less performance, but it's the same price. We're pretty much going backwards considering the fact that the 9070 XT has been out for over a year. And I mean, none of the graphics cards, you could really find them at MSRP. My buddy Erock on Tech, friend of the channel, he actually made a really good video summarizing his thoughts on the 9070 GRE. And I was in full agreement with everything he had to say. And I mean, the 9070 GRE was a China exclusive model for a while, so benchmarks for this GPU are out. And I think some of the mainstream tech tubers have been recently posting content about it. So you guys can check that out. Nothing really exciting, but I mean, these days, in terms of GPUs, you take what you can get, right? I guess that's the mentality. But something that I wanted to focus on mainly for this video was the 5800X 3D, something that a number of people had been kind of messaging me about and said, hey, what do you think about all this, considering the fact that, you benchmark CPUs and you've done, you've benchmarked CPUs against other parts in various modern games. And yeah, I mean, I thought I'd give my input on this if someone was interested in knowing, if this thing is worth it now. The 5800X 3D, right? This is a processor that AMD originally launched back in 2022. And even back then, when it came out, if you guys saw my initial video back then, I was skeptical about it. But I mean, I was glad to be proven wrong. I was pretty happy with the way the processor turned out with its performance. Um, you know, and then Intel retaliated finally with Alder Lake, and Alder Lake was a really good architecture. And then, we've been kind of in this back and forth CPU battle between the two companies, as much as one sided people think it is, and given the sales data and all of that. But the 5800X 3D, should you buy this thing after 4 years, right? AMD's kind of reviving it, resurrecting this, calling this the 10th anniversary because, they're celebrating the 10th anniversary for the AM4 socket, which, I mean, kudos to them for that, right? Supporting a socket for this long, like 10 years. I don't think that's never ever been done in the, PC DIY space, or any industry for that matter. But yeah, that's pretty cool. But the 5800X 3D, right? There's a few things I wanted to talk about: the pricing and the performance. Is it worth it? Obviously, performance wise, not really much to say, right? There's been benchmarks everywhere now. Like I haven't personally done too extensive like benchmarking videos with the 5800X 3D. I do actually have one. It's in my 4K OLED rig, and I think it's still a phenomenal CPU. It still holds up really well, especially at 4K, right? I'm not playing any CPU intensive games. I'm primarily GPU bottleneck there, even with my 4090, because I'm just cranking up the settings. I was just, recently playing Forza Horizon 6 with my RTX 4090 and the 5800 X3D. Runs beautifully. I have no complaints about the performance. Um, but with that said, 4 years later, AMD's resurrecting the CPU, and the pricing is what I think is making a lot of people question this move because they've released this part at $350 US, and I can't recall what the original MSRP was when they announced the 5800 X3D. I think back then it was either 429 or like 479, maybe even more than that. I'll have to look it up and I'll leave a pinned comment. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a processor that was released 4 years ago, and it's not being discounted much, um, you know, after such a long time. Like 4 years, it's still a pretty long time despite, all the hype around AM4. And I think the reason why AMD thinks they can get away with this pricing is simply because of the fact that they can bank on the hype and the premium upgrade path that is being offered to a lot of AM4 owners. Because for a lot of AM4 guys, like there's a bunch of people out there that are still rocking like even first generation Ryzen's, 2700Xs, 3600s, 3700Xs, and they're like, you know what? Given the circumstances right now with the Rampocalypse and prices being hyped, I just want some sort of upgrade that I can do without having to rebuild my whole entire PC. And I mean, that was one of the main selling points they had with the 5800 X3D. Even now, is the fact that you can just do this quick drop and upgrade, and you can get a bit of a CPU performance boost. Only worth it though if you have any plans to upgrade your GPU, right? Like if you're someone who's rocking a 3700X and then you're still running something like an RTX like 3070, really no reason for you to upgrade, right? Like take a few steps back and give it some thought, make it look sensible for an upgrade, right? Don't just go out there and buy this part because you're getting suckered into the hype and you're like, oh my god, it's the last best AM4 CPU that I can buy for gaming. I need to get this, otherwise I'm never going to get my chance again. You know, you probably may not even need it considering what your system is right now. So definitely evaluate the whole system and see if you actually need it. Look at the games that you're playing, look at the settings. Um, but I think the 5800 X3D, even with this resurrection, even at the price point, I think it's still gonna do um, some decent numbers at the start. We'll see how that goes. I know, like I said, there's a lot of people out there that are itching to get their hands on this processor. I mean, for at one point, um, when like they stopped producing it, it became pretty rare, and it was actually selling for higher than MSRP. I mean, at the beginning of the whole Rampocalypse, this thing shot up in price on the secondhand used market because, again, a lot of people were banking on the fact that, all right, since DDR5 is out of the question, I still got some DDR4 laying around, right? I'll just pair this processor with some cheapo AM4 motherboard with some 16 gigabytes or 32 gigabytes of DDR4 and call it a day. And I've still got a pretty, solid, capable gaming CPU and gaming system here that I can pair with a fairly high end GPU, right? Like I said, I have a 5800 X3D and the 4090 in that 4K OLED rig, and performance is absolutely phenomenal. I don't foresee myself changing out that platform for quite a number of years until I run into a game that it's just hammering the CPU even at that resolution. But again, like that's going to be a while from now. But yeah, I don't know. I'm pretty conflicted about this part, especially because of the price point, right? Like I said, AMD's really banking on that premium and AM4 hype. I think that if they really wanted to make this a really good bargain upgrade for existing AM4 owners, or even like new builders, right? Like if this thing was resurrected at like $229, I think that at that price point, I'd be like, okay, then you can actually, it makes it a no brainer for a lot of people, even if you're someone who's building like a brand new system. However, right now at its current price point, it only makes sense to pay for the premium if you're on AM4 and you really, really do not want to build a whole new system. If you're starting from scratch, I'd say ignore this processor really because I mean, they're launching a 7700 X3D, which is on a newer gen AM5 platform at a cheaper price. So like, make that make sense, right? So I think that, you have to evaluate your options. Of course, DDR5 is hella expensive, but I think, if you do your research, try to hunt for deals on like cheap motherboards. It doesn't have to be something crazy high end, right? Like you don't have to go for some super high end X670E or X870E motherboard. You can even bide your time with 16 gigabytes of DDR5 memory, and that might hold you up for a while. So yeah, I mean, definitely evaluate your options at $349 for new system builders. I don't think this really makes much sense. In fact, hey, actually, if you are, and like, people talk about dead end platforms, but if you're talking about keeping a system for like 5 years, right? And I've had a chat with this from some other YouTubers as well. Ivan from Chasers, he's a friend of the channel, and he's talked about this as well, and he's totally right. People disagree with him, but buying like a secondhand 13900K, or like going on to one of the retailers and excuse me, going to one of the e-tailers and getting like an open box 13600K for like on the cheap, right? Like those things brand new, I think at one point were going for like $129. Get yourself like a cheap Z790 motherboard or even Z690. There's the DDR4 variants of those motherboards, right? So you can get that, and then get some 32 gigabytes, 3200 CL16 memory and whatever. Just bide your time with that. That would still be a phenomenal system and would hold up really well and go toe to toe with this 5800 X3D. Granted, you do a little bit of tuning, right? I know some people are like, I don't want to do all that. I want the best out of the box. So yeah, maybe the X3D out of the box stuff, not having to look at a BIOS screen, that appeals to a lot of people. But I don't know. I think that there's some good alternatives, better alternatives out there than just, buying this 4-year-old processor being resurrected at $350, right? And who knows what availability is going to be like? Who knows if it's going to be scalped? I don't know. But I don't know. I thought I'd just give you guys my thoughts and put this out there because a lot of people were asking me, what do you think about the 5800 X3D? Do you think it's viable? And, it's not a very straightforward answer. It really depends on your situation and what your budget is and how much of effort you're willing to put in to hunt for parts and deals and look at your used market. But yeah, I mean, that's going to wrap it up for this one. I hope you guys found something informative and helpful from this. And yeah, we'll touch base in the next video. Take care.
If you guys found this video to be informative and entertaining, then leave a like. Let me know your thoughts and comments down below. Be sure to check out the video description for cool links and ways to support the channel, such as using my Amazon affiliate link. And if you're interested in seeing more content like this, then consider subscribing. I'd greatly appreciate it. Thank you guys so much for watching, take care, and I'll see you in the next one.